Coming this fall from SJS Direct in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. You can pre-order your copy of The Man Crisis today on Amazon.com. When I take a critical look at the way Supreme Court Justice nominee Brett Kavanaugh has been treated during this confirmation process, it just disgusts me. Whether you be a Republican or a Democrat, you should be disgusted at the junior high school tactics being used to malign Brett Kavanaugh's name. Now, I know all about the tactics that have been used in this confirmation process because these were the same types of tactics that were used to bully me in junior high school. And I clearly saw that when I started to see these articles popping up talking about how Brett Kavanaugh was too emotional to be a Supreme Court justice, because I saw that those articles and started to reflect on my time in junior high school and the practices that beta males and females would use to try to turn someone who didn't do anything wrong into a bad guy. Because when it comes down to bullies, they often like to go out here and do their dirt. And then when somebody goes out of their way to defend themselves, then they are the villain in the picture. Because after these people throw their rocks and hide their hands, and then the other person fights back, what they want to do is then say they are the victim. And with Brett Kavanaugh, I clearly see how they're trying to make him out to be the villain when he is the one who has been victimized in this whole process. Because all your Brett Kavanaugh wanted to do was work towards becoming a Supreme Court justice, and he thought that he would be able to achieve that goal on the merits. However, because there are several political forces here in the United States that don't want to see a conservative Supreme Court, they have gone out of their way to malign this man's image, malign this man's reputation, and make it look like he is something that he probably isn't. Now, when I look at those allegations made by your Christine Blasey Ford and several other women, these allegations clearly have not been substantiated, because if your Brett Kavanaugh could pass multiple background checks for over 20 years, at least 6 of them, and none of these issues ever came up, then it's clear that this man is qualified to be a Supreme Court justice, because the same FBI investigations that happened over 20 years ago, all 6 of them, found no sort of issues. Then another investigation would still find no issues. And because the most recent FBI investigation into Christine Blasey Ford's allegations have probably come up finding no issues and no way to substantiate Blasey Ford's story or the stories of other women, this is where the media comes in, trying to come out saying that your Brett Kavanaugh is too emotional to be a Supreme Court justice. And I see right through that emotional manipulation, because again, when I was in junior high school, I had to deal with the same types of games played on me. And what they would do is they would make these allegations, or they would try to provoke me in some way, shape, or form, and then, because I was young and didn't know any better, I would react to these individuals. And then what would happen is, after these people did their dirt, they would then hide their hands and make themselves out to be the victim, and I would be the one who would wind up in trouble. And this is what's happening to your Brett Kavanaugh right now. We have a series of bullies on the left who have gone out of their way to make these allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, and then when Brett Kavanaugh makes his arguments to rebut them in his testimony, which was emotional in some moments, and you could understand why this man was being so emotional, because when you take a look at these allegations made against this man regarding sexual assault and sexual violence, these type of allegations can be the thing that can literally destroy a man's life, like in the cases of men like Bill Cosby and Brian Banks and many others who had to deal with false rape claims and false allegations of sexual assault. And I could understand why this man was so emotional, because here we have this man who was just about to get the biggest break in his career, and you have this female who's coming out 36 years later with this allegation like a crab in a bucket to pull this man down. And that's very devastating, especially to a man who probably never hurt a female in his life and probably didn't even know this female. And I could understand why that man got so emotional. But what's really makes me disgusted is how sick and twisted these people are here in America, that you're going to take this man's emotional pain and then try to use it as an excuse to say that this man is not qualified to be a Supreme Court justice. If anything, when I look at his emotion, it just showed his passion for the law, because when I listened to Brett Kavanaugh's argument, he was talking about how due process in this country had been undermined. Because when I sat there, I listened to his testimony, and he was I believe he was really emotional about how due process was just thrown under the bus in this smear campaign orchestrated by leftists and members of the Me Too movement, who show how they just don't care about our United States Constitution and how it's all about their feelings and their feelings regarding a possible conservative Supreme Court. They're so scared of conservatives taking control over the Supreme Court that they're willing to engage in absolutely unethical and egregious behaviors like accusing an innocent man of sexual assault and looking to smear his name in the mainstream media. And then after the smear campaign completely fails and the FBI comes back a week later in their investigation and finds that there was absolutely nothing to substantiate Christine Blasey Ford's story, we then have them trying to say that this man is too emotional to be a Supreme Court justice. And I can see right through all of that, and I see the emotional manipulation being perpetrated by our mainstream media, and that's the thing that disgusts me. So it doesn't matter whether Brett Kavanaugh is qualified on the merits, it's all about the feelings of a group of women, the feelings of a group of rich people, and the feelings of a group of people who don't like the legal interpretation of the law that possibly Brett Kavanaugh could have. And that's not how our country runs. Our country is a nation of laws. Our country is a nation of policies. And when I take a look at what's being done to Brett Kavanaugh, it sickens me in the same way I was sickened by the way Clarence Thomas had his name maligned, the same way Mike Tyson had his name maligned, the same way Bill Cosby had his name maligned, because in all of these cases we had a female making an allegation of something sexual happening and then using that allegation to destroy a man's reputation. And that's something that should not happen in a country where we have a standard of innocent until proven guilty and a standard of due process under the law. Because when I look at this Supreme Court confirmation hearing, it shows how due process has become completely eroded here in the United States. Because here you have Brett Kavanaugh, who was proven in his argument with hard evidence that he was probably not there when Christine Blasey Ford says this incident happened, FBI investigation proving that nothing happened, and then we have them saying he's too emotional, which shows us that this isn't about trying this case on the merits or trying Brett Kavanaugh's qualifications based on the merits, and that this, again, is based on the feelings of a group of people who are so butthurt about losing an election in 2016 that they're going out of their way to destroy your Brett Kavanaugh by proxy because they can't get to Donald Trump. And that's something that really shows how sick some of these American people are and how deeply deranged some of these individuals are, that they're so upset about the political direction of the country changing that they cannot deal with the whole fact that we the people voted for Donald Trump. We the people voted for a conservative Congress. We the people voted for a conservative Senate. And because we the people made these decisions, we have to deal with the consequences of those decisions. Because if all of those Americans who were out there marching and protesting had voted in that election, because every time I hear from one of these SJWs or far leftists and they ask the critical question, did you vote in the 2016 election? The answer is no. This is the answer we get when you deal with these type of people. And what they don't understand is because you did not vote, you got the government that you got, because in a democratic republic, it's we the people who make these choices, and we the people need to start understanding you have to deal with the consequences of your choices. Because when I take a look at these people who are doing this to Brett Kavanaugh, it's clear to me that they want power, but they don't want any of the responsibility, and they want to sit there and make Brett Kavanaugh out to be a bad guy, when the real bad guy out here are many of we the people who want to have a government, but they don't want to be responsible for that government. They don't want to be responsible for the policies of their government, and they want to be able to just be able to do whatever they please, and not understanding that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And when you have people in America who don't understand their government, this is what we get, what we're having right now. And when I look at what happened to Brett Kavanaugh, again, it takes me back to junior high school, and it shows me how deeply messed up Americans are, because here we have college-educated, professional politicians, people who were supposed to be well-versed in the law, and they're acting like a bunch of junior high school kids, and they're looking to destroy one kid because the other side doesn't like him, and they don't like him because he was nominated by one other kid, and they liked him before when he was with President Bush, but because President Trump nominates him, he's a bad guy. And again, that's just egregious to do to someone, to destroy somebody's reputation and career, all because you don't like who the person nominated, because that's just something only a junior high school kid would do. A junior high school kid would participate in that type of behavior, and it's just embarrassing to see grown men and women taking our government down to a junior high school level with this kind of behavior. And what type of model, I say, are you bringing to your kids? What type of model are you presenting to your kids when you see them saying that this man, after he's proven that he didn't do these things, and the FBI has proven he hasn't done these things, that you want to come back and say he's too emotional for doing what anyone would do when they were charged with a serious felony in defending themselves by being emotional and being just completely shocked at this, and you're going to say he's a bad person, when if you really take a real serious look at it and see the emotional manipulation behind the scenes, you can see that this is all about manipulating people's feelings so that they don't think critically about what's being done to them. But as a critical thinker, I see what's being done behind the scenes to Brett Kavanaugh, and it just absolutely disgusts me, because instead of us being a nation of laws that looks out for making sure that we make sure our Supreme Court is balanced for the next generation, we're all getting into people's feelings and thinking about what we want based on our feelings, not based on who would be best to be our next Supreme Court Justice. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications like the upcoming Man Crisis book, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.